Welcome to Get Over It, the Consciousness Transforming Podcast for exceptional 21st century living. Folks, we have one of my favorites back. Paul Levy is back with us today, and we're going to talk about his newest book, Undreaming Wetiko, Breaking the Spell of Nightmare Mind Virus. And, I think this is, in my opinion, his best book to date because he really helps you understand what's going on today. And you can figure out how you want to fit into that energy. But he provides a lot of information for you to relieve yourself of the mind virus. So listen up and see how it works for you. Now, the information shared on Get Over It uses intuitive and pragmatic insight to help you shift your consciousness to break through the blocks and release energy that is no longer needed. Yes, we're going to help you let go of the BS that's holding you back. But you guys know I always ask, are you truly ready to? And by the way, folks, BS is belief system. A bit about me for my new listeners: intuitive since birth. I'm a third generation intuitive with over 3 decades of experience supporting people to break through the blocks along their path. I'm a strategist for personal and professional transformation, revealing cutting edge information that enables you to prosper and thrive. I spent 25 successful years in corporate America as an executive sales professional, and I am the founder of Healing Visions Ministries and the Northern California Children's Education Network, a 501c3 nonprofit. I provide consultations and healings in all areas of life that heal the mind-body-spirit connection, allowing you to live your very best life. My clients tell me that I keep it real while providing them with accurate information to assist them along their journey as a spirit living a human existence. But they also say, if you really don't want to know, don't ask Monique. My background includes a doctorate in metaphysics, Reiki master teacher, ordained minister, and clinical hypnotherapist. So whether you are stressed, depressed, or possessed, I can help. To find out more about me and the services I offer, go to my website, and that's MoniqueChapman.com. And I invite you to like me and follow me on Facebook and LinkedIn. My guest today, a pioneer in the field of spiritual emergence, Paul Levy, is a wounded healer in private practice, assisting others who are also awakening to the dreamlike nature of reality. He has authored three books on the Wetiko mind virus, the most recent being the book we're talking about today, Undreaming Wetiko. He is the founder of the Awaken in the Dream community in Portland, Oregon, and he is an artist who is deeply steeped in the work of C.G. Jung and has been a Tibetan Buddhist practitioner for almost 40 years. And you can check him out at his website, and that is awakeninthedream.com. And welcome back, Paul.
Yeah, hi, I'm so happy to be here with you. Thank you for the invite.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm so glad that you decided to come back. So real quick, for people who might not have listened to the other shows that you've been on here on this podcast, what is Wetiko?
What Wetiko is, it's a Native American term, and it really, on the one hand, it's this cannibalistic spirit. You could think of it as the spirit of evil, but I point out that it's a quantum phenomena. So you can conceive of it like a mind virus. It's a very simple way, but I point out that it's a quantum phenomena, and holographically encoded within this mind virus is not only the deepest evil, but it's actually helping us to wake up and to evolve. And the thing, people hear about a mind virus and they think, oh, that's all woo-woo and new agey. But what it's basically saying is that the source and the solution of the collective madness that's playing out all over our world is to be found within our psyche. And that's a no-brainer. And so this mind virus, it operates through the blind spots in our unconscious and through the projective tendencies of the mind in such a way that we entrance ourselves. And so if we're not consciously expressing our own creative genius, this mind virus plugs in to our creative spirit and turns it against us because it has no creativity at all, but it's a master impersonator. It puts us on, even in the apocryphal text, they talk about Wetiko, they call it the counterfeiting spirit. Every spiritual tradition throughout history has been pointing at Wetiko. For example, in the Castaneda books, the Carlos Castaneda books, Carlos's teacher, he doesn't have the name Wetiko, but he calls it the predator. He says, this is the topic of topics. There's nothing more important than this. And I fully agree. That's why I've written 3 books about it, because if we don't come to terms what it's showing us, because Wetiko is this revelation, it's actually helping us to wake up. But if we don't recognize what it's showing us, it will kill us. So that's a very short form answer of what Wetiko is.
Well, it's short form, but it's also extremely broad because it truly fits in today's world. And it seems to be a global incidence where people are either awakening and deciding not to buy into this negative mass mind consciousness, or I should say maybe even unconsciousness, or they're doing the opposite. How does the media today, and I'm talking worldwide, just not here in the United States, play into the concept of Wetiko?
Yeah, well, the thing about Wetiko, it's non-local, which means it's not bound by third-dimensional space and time. And so it operates, through all different channels in the external world, but it's an inner disease of the soul that actually operates within our minds too. And so the mainstream media, all throughout the world in a way has been captured by the Wetiko mind virus, or by the corporate powers that be. And it's putting out this incredible, whether you call it this disinformation or misinformation or propaganda, but in a sense, the war we're all fighting is a war on our consciousness. So if we get hooked by the propaganda, then we parrot the propaganda to other people like we're in possession of the truth. And in a way, we're just, the algorithm is getting, propagated through us. And then we reinforce each other's spell to the extent that we've bought in to the agreed upon story that the mainstream media is propagating. And you see, the thing about Wetiko, this mind virus, it's contagious and it operates through the blind spots. And so when you fall prey to it, and it's in the collective unconscious, so we all potentially have it in potential. But then when you find other people who reinforce your point of view, it creates a collective psychosis, a psychic epidemic. And that's exactly what Wetiko is. It's a collective psychosis. And we're in the middle of a collective madness right now. And I'm trying to bring in, it's incredibly important to talk about that, as compared to just having it be this normalized, situation.
Okay, I don't want to address what I'm about to say politically, although it is political. Now, we have a candidate on the Republican Party in the United States, on Donald Trump, running again for president, and he has had many, I'm going to say, just to keep it clean, unfortunate incidences that he has caused himself, and he has a massive amount of followers. How do people who follow anyone to that degree, how can they perhaps wake up from the Wetiko? Or should they?
Right. Well, the thing is, you see, here's the thing: when somebody is taken over by Wetiko, and once again, we all potentially have it, is if we see, oh, Donald Trump has it or Joe Biden has it, and we think they have it, and we don't, that perspective is showing that we've fallen under the thrall of the bug. And so, the idea being like, whoever, Trump, Biden, Putin, just, pick the name. They're all just picking up roles in the deeper dreaming that's playing out, in our world. When somebody gets taken over via their unconscious blind spot and then unwittingly becomes or consciously becomes an instrument for Wetiko, part of it is that they propagate these lies, but they begin to believe their own lie. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
psychological dynamic. When you believe your own lie, you're very convincing. You have a charisma, and that can hook other people through their blind spots, who then support you. And that just feeds in. You see, the thing about Wetiko, yeah, it operates individually, but with evil, and this is, I think of the work of the great psychiatrist Jung. He points out that it really gains its power when it works in masses. It's one thing, yeah, it can work, through an individual, but then
Mm-hmm.
when people, when the unconscious is constellated in a group of people or in a nation or in a species, that's where the evil of Wetiko, can just run riot and have a field day. And that's what we're seeing in the world today. And just one final thing, if I had a marketing department trying to publicize my work, they couldn't do a better job than what's happening in the world today with, the
Yeah.
whole pandemic and the vaccine and the war in Ukraine and just everything and anything. People think, oh my God, this is just an abstract idea, this mind virus, or people struggling with addictions or trauma. We're all in trauma. All of that,
Mm-hmm.
at the bottom of all of those things is the Wetiko mind virus.
Okay. Well, you talk about the source of Wetiko is unhealed ancestral abuse. Talk to us about that a little bit more deeply, please.
Yeah, for sure. Because I've been writing about this, for decades. And I had a personal encounter with Wetiko, over 40 years ago in my family. And the story is not important, but it completely destroyed my family. And then I began to realize, so I had an awakening based on the incredible suffering that I was going through, and I right away got thrown into into these mental hospitals, and I realized, oh my God, the same evil that was playing out through my family, through a particular person, was now playing out through the system of psychiatry. And then I realized, wait a second, this is the same evil that's playing out through the body politic of the world, like they were iterations of the same fractal. And so I've been trying to figure out, what is the source of this evil, of this mind virus? Was it some sort of collective trauma that happened centuries ago? Or, people think, oh, there are these negative ETs. And more I'm convinced it's unhealed multi-generational ancestral trauma. And what I mean is that, to the extent that, we're all in trauma, we're a species having
Mm.
PTSD. And how trauma works is that unless you do your inner work and integrate that trauma and heal, you're then compelled, as if by fate, to unconsciously act it out on your next of kin. And as if giving a transmission, a psychic inheritance, then the kids, they inherit the unhealed trauma of the parents who inherited it from the grandparents. And the particular, all of us, we're the particular blossom on the family tree. And this is exactly, in the collected works, Jung talks about that evil is regenerated over the generations. And that's
Mm.
exactly what I'm pointing at. To the extent that any of us don't do our inner work, then we just unconsciously pass on and transmit our unhealed trauma to our kids. And so the point is that each and every one of us, we've inherited this legacy, this inheritance of the unhealed abuse from our species, from our particular family. And, instead of feeling victimized by it and how unfair it is, it's an incredible honor. We are playing the role of the ones who can break that link in the chain. And to the extent we heal our own trauma that we've inherited from our family, then that, in a way I don't understand, goes back through the past in time and even in the future and heals
Mhm.
all the generations. So it's actually a great opportunity for us to really own our stuff and do our inner work and take responsibility for our own predicament.
Okay. Well, a lot of people talk about inner work, and I'm a firm believer in inner work. However, I've run across people who truly very steeped, and it's okay because that's their choice. They're truly steeped in organized religion. And in my opinion, I don't feel that organized religion allows someone to do their inner work. So hopefully I'm wrong about that. And what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I think of Jung. He says something, and I'm paraphrasing, like organized religion protects people from having a religious experience. It's very much like that. So I make a distinction between religion and being spiritual, because we're all by nature spiritual. Because, like, I'm a Tibetan Buddhist practitioner, and the main thing they're talking about is to realize your true nature, your Buddha nature, your Christ nature. They're all names for the same thing. And what is our nature? What is our true nature? Our true nature is love, is compassion, is being creative. So when we have the realization of our nature, of our true nature, we actually embody those qualities of being a loving, compassionate person who embodies and expresses themselves creatively. And the more we do that, guess what? The more we deepen our realization of our nature in a positive feedback loop. And that's experiential. We don't need any priest to sort of mediate that. That's something that's available to all of us. And unfortunately, in our world, like, organized religion can easily become like this control system, and it can keep people asleep. And that's just tragic.
It is, but how can one wake up for that? Say, they're interacting with someone who was more on the spiritual side, and they see light, they see little sparks of light, but they're still so heavily ensconced in their BS belief system because it's been so heavily programmed. They almost
Right.
feel that it's wrong to take another path. So how can you get out of that continuous hamster cycle of, like, thinking that, okay, there might be something different, but I got to do the hamster wheel because that's what's right.
Right. And you're exactly right. We've all been programmed, just being born in this world and into our culture, and, with our parents who themselves have been programmed. So on the one hand, the first step is, if you see somebody who's really embodying light, it's helpful to realize, oh, wow, they're, in a way, it's like you're in a dream and they're a dream character. They're an embodied reflective aspect of a part of you. So you're actually seeing your own reflection of light. So instead of keeping it separate, thinking, oh, they're the ones who are carrying light and I'm not, no, you're like looking into this mirror and seeing your own reflection. So that's one thing. But the other thing too, I point out that, there are some incredibly important points as far as how to heal this mind virus. On the one hand, connect with your true nature, connect with your compassion, see the dreamlike nature, because what I'm basically trying to get across is that we're having a collectively shared dream, that we are dreaming up into manifestation moment by moment. That's what I realized when I had my awakening 40 plus years ago. But the other thing is, okay, I always, when I work with people, I always, like a heat-seeking missile, I go to, what is your relationship to your creative process? And so many people have stories, oh, I'm stuck, I'm not creative, I'm blocked, I feel resistance. And I'm really, really interested in that edge, because, that's not there. The person isn't just passively experiencing it. No, they're unconsciously participating in keeping themselves stuck or identifying with that. They're not creative. And I always try to shed light on, what is the story? What is the belief that's stopping you from tapping in to your true creative nature? Because our nature is creative. That's what quantum physics, because I wrote a book on quantum physics, and it was because, quantum physics, I realized, was offering us the solution to the mind virus, because quantum physics was basically pointing out we are creating our experience of ourselves and of the world each and every moment. There is no one else doing that. We are doing that. And when you tap into that and add consciousness to it, then you're able to create your experience consciously in a way that's in alignment with who you're discovering yourself to be, which is that you're not a separate self, that we actually are interdependent, interconnected with everybody. And the energetic expression of that realization is compassion.
Okay. Could you make a comparison at all between Wetiko and the Matrix? And if so, what is it?
Yeah. Well, exactly. I mean, that's such a great movie that illustrates Wetiko, in that, to the extent it's like being in a dream, in a night dream, and not knowing the nature of your situation and thinking that this dream world you're inhabiting, it seems real and it seems objective, and you actually become entranced thinking it's separate from you, and then you react to the outside world and you become conditioned by it. See, that's the power of our creative genius, because when you're in a dream, if you hold this viewpoint, the dream, which is nothing other than a reflection of your own mind, has no choice but to instantaneously reflect that viewpoint, giving you all the evidence confirming the objective truth of that viewpoint. And then you become even more fixed in that viewpoint in a feedback loop ad infinitum, where you actually, what I'm describing, so then the dream will even give you more proof, confirming whatever viewpoint you're holding, which convinces you even more. And this feedback loop, which is a self-reinforcing, closed feedback loop, you literally entrance yourself. You literally like hypnotize yourself. And think about what I'm describing. Your own genius is being turned against you. And that's in a way what the Matrix was showing, but it's completely within our power to see through that process. That's what my work is about, is trying to help people to see through that process. And then when you see through that, you actually, that creative spirit that is your nature becomes freed up to be channeled, instead of in a destructive way, in a constructive way, where we can, in a literal way, we can dream up the world that we want to live in.
Okay. You devoted a whole chapter in your book to the battle with our angels. Talk to us about that, because you would think that the angel, you wouldn't have a battle with your angel.
No. Well, all the great scholars who study this say no. Well, that's what our situation is. So in other words, the Wetiko mind virus is this daimonic energy, and the word daimonic, think about it like as being a higher dimensional energy that can possess a person, and they would be oblivious that they've been taken over, and they're just an instrument for this daimonic higher dimensional energy to come through. Now, what a daimon is, it's the guiding spirit and the inner voice. It helps us find what we're here to do. It helps us find our voice. It connects us with our genius. And encoded in that daimon is the creative spirit. But if we don't actually get into conscious relationship with that daimon, it constellates negatively and becomes a demon. So, I have a whole chapter. I'm saying, well, here's Wetiko, and this is a book about Wetiko, which has to do, which can constellate into this demonic energy. Well, what about shedding light on our angel? Because we all have a celestial counterpart that's with us each and every moment. But, it's powerless unless we actually are receptive and open and take a step towards it. Then it's just nothing but a mirror. It then takes a step towards us. So, what I'm pointing out is one of the ways of really healing this mind virus is for us to deepen our intimate relationship with this, inner angel, and one can think of it as that's our intuition, that's our inner guidance system. This is exactly like when you study the work of Jung, this is exactly what he was after. He called it the ego self axis. The self is the higher self, the God within. It's like getting into an intimate relationship with that daimon, with that inner voice, that guiding spirit, with the self. And that actually, in a way, protects you from the negative aspects of this mind virus.
Okay. So how can we use Wetiko to truly own our creativity, not allow someone else to be a naysayer or block us doing what we feel is correct?
Totally. That's such a great question. I mean, I just want to go back to the Bible, because the Bible is chock full of phrases. They talk about this mind blindness, and they correlate it to a closed heart. And they say, people have closed their eyes. Because the thing about Wetiko, it's a blindness, but it's a self-induced hysterical form of blindness, where we are literally closing our own eyes. We are choosing to turn a blind eye. There's no one else doing that. We're doing that. We're participating in creating our own blindness. And like I was mentioning, in the apocryphal text, they talk about the counterfeiting spirit. And this is word for word, describing Wetiko. Now, here's the thing. This counterfeiting spirit, it has no creativity, but it's a master impersonator. It puts us on. It offers us a false version of ourselves. And this is what Jung was saying was the greatest danger facing humanity, is for us to identify with a fictitious personality. This is exactly what he was pointing at. So here, Wetiko, this mind virus, it offers us this fictitious identity. Oh, I'm wounded, I'm traumatized. And if we're not awake in that moment and we identify with its version of ourselves, then it has us, then it can manipulate and control us. And, if you think about what I'm describing, you see here, Wetiko, it can't steal our soul. It actually doesn't even exist. There is no such thing as Wetiko. If people are hearing this and feeling afraid of a mind virus, no, the mind virus feeds off of fear. There is no such thing as Wetiko at all, separate from our own mind, and yet it can kill us. You see, that's the paradox. But if you think about what I'm describing, so, here Wetiko can steal our soul, but it tricks us into giving it away. Then we identify with who we're not. Then we forget who we actually are. And then we disconnect from our creative genius. That's a recipe for madness. And that's Wetiko in a nutshell.
Okay. Well, it's interesting. You said recipe for madness. So people who are, say, truly confined to an institution, a psychiatric institution, are they people who maybe have bought into Wetiko, but other people don't understand, or are they outside of that spectrum of even on some level being able to acknowledge the energy of Wetiko?
Yeah, well, there are people who are really suffering, the whole mental illness thing. I went through that when I had my awakening, and I was so excited about what I was realizing. I was 24, that I immediately got thrown in mental hospitals for that next couple of years, probably 4 or 5 times. I was thrown in mental hospitals and diagnosed. Oh, there's this new discovery, chemical imbalance, bipolar. You'll have this illness the rest of your life. You'll need to be medicated till your dying breath. And I just thought, oh my God, they have no idea, these psychiatrists, what they're talking about. And, so I was fortunate in that I was strong enough or blessed enough or whatever to just very quickly extricate myself from that situation. So I think a lot of people in the psychiatric community are potentially shamans and healers who are awakening to their nature, but because they haven't integrated it, they immediately get pathologized. And when you're awakening, out of a trance, you're in such a vulnerable, fragile state. And when authority figures, when they pathologize you, it literally can make you sick. It made me sick. And once then I became sick, then that served as evidence confirming to these idiot psychiatrists, oh, well, our diagnosis is correct. It was like they were putting, me under a spell. And unfortunately, I think there are definitely people who are part of the psychiatric community who've bought into their illness, and then they're like hooked on medication and are on the backwards of psychiatry. And it's tragic because they might be the ones of us who are actually awakening and are stepping into being shamans, but they're being destroyed by psychiatry.
Interesting how another level of control is almost like organized religion, but not being called organized religion.
Right, absolutely.
You mentioned earlier quantum physics, and it's kind of a buzzword, and some people understand it, some people don't. But how can we utilize quantum physics as a spiritual path?
Yeah. Well, I point out in my quantum physics book that quantum physics has unwittingly promoted itself to become a spiritual path, and it's offering us the medicine for Wetiko. Because think about it. Okay, before quantum physics, scientists thought they were just passively observing this objective world, trying to understand it. Then quantum physics, a little bit over a century ago, comes into the world, comes into our minds, and actually empirically proves again and again, there is no such thing as an objective world. There's no such thing as an objective anything. It's just an idea in your mind with no correlate in reality. In other words, quantum physics had proven that the act of observing this universe actually influences the universe observed. And I should just point out that's just like a dream. And what that's pointing out is that the act of observation is creative. And that's the rabbit hole that I go down in my book, because when you realize that, you begin to realize the unimaginably vast creative agency that each one of us have. But if we're unconscious of it, that creative power gets outsourced, and then the powers that be or the state, they're more than happy to assume and to use our own creative genius against us. And that's actually what's happening. So quantum physics, in essence, and I'm no physicist at all, but quantum physics has proven, absolutely bound it out, that we are having a collectively shared dream, that we are dreaming up moment by moment. Now, the typical academic corporate physicists are not trained to recognize this. So it's undeniable, there's no disagreement at all, that quantum physics is the greatest discovery ever in all of history in the realm of science. The controversy is, what does it mean? How do we interpret it? Because it's so radical. that it typically, a discovery of this radical takes centuries to begin to integrate into the unconscious of our species. And I'm pointing out that quantum physics is showing us, it's empirically proving to us that we are having a collective dream. And this is what every spiritual tradition is pointing at. That's why in the Bible, how often does Christ say, awaken?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you believe that story in the book. Okay. Before I let you go, I have to talk about Wetiko and technology, especially focusing in on AI. So talk to us about that and your thoughts.
Yeah, well, I think we've all been more and more becoming a little bit more fluent in AI. And this is an example. The same thing with the discoveries in quantum physics. They can be like tapped in for good or for evil. And the same thing with AI, it can make our lives incredibly better. But if it gets in the hands of people who aren't morally, sort of developed, it can be used to, create power over others. And so, many people I know, the thing they think is the greatest threat to humanity is AI. But I point out from the dreaming point of view, it's a known thing psychologically when somebody is right at the edge, and they're like, say they're in a dream and they're at the edge of a cliff or in the corner, there's no way out, they're double bound, it's a no-win situation. So often individually in that person's process, that's when they actually have this lucid moment, then they have a revelation or an insight. And I'm pointing out, we as a species, we might be dreaming that up collectively. We are pushing ourselves right to the edge of our cliff, to this cliff where we're clearly destroying ourselves, we're backed into a corner. And I'm pointing out, just like an individual, this might be the very thing that creates enough pressure in the alchemical vessel of the human psyche for us to actually start awakening.
Okay. Well, I've really enjoyed our time together. You always bring such illumination and of information to the audience. Why don't you share with us a pearl of wisdom for the audience to take with them?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I point out, I think the biggest the biggest chapter in the book is about that, we basically are all shamans. We're being called to be a shaman, and a shaman is the wounded healer. And a shaman is somebody who actually takes on the illness of the person they're working with, of the world or the community they're in, and they literally fall ill. They experience the illness as an inside job. And so we are all dreaming up this collective madness, and we're we're affected by it and infected by it and made sick by it. But when you contextualize your experience, instead of just pathologizing yourself, oh, wow, I feel brain fog, I feel traumatized, I don't feel creative. Understand that you, in your personal experience, might be actually subjectively experiencing the very malady that our collective species is suffering from. And then if you can carry that illness that you're now experiencing subjectively within yourself, if you can experience that in a way to connect you back with your wholeness, that's what a shaman does. And then by you doing that energetically, you're actually, carving that path in the collective unconscious and making it easier for other people to also connect, back to their wholeness. And that's what this is all about, because that's the major archetype activated in the collective unconscious, is the shamanic archetype, where the shaman, when they're called, makes the descent into the underworld, into the darkness of the unconscious, where they actually had this death rebirth experience. And that's exactly what we're going through.
Very well said. It is exactly what we're going through. Paul, I appreciate your time today. I appreciate all the information that you bring to illuminate the world on our spiritual path. So thank you very much for being with me today.
Sure. I so appreciate, really being invited. So really, thank you so much.
No problem. And to the audience, we thank you, and we are extremely appreciative of your support. And to everyone, please remember that the most important choice that you make is what you choose to make important. Consider making the masterful choice of undreaming Wetiko. Abundant blessings, light, and love to all. Agape.